today I will be reviewing the latest book by Dr. Anil Aggrawal, that is Clinical and Forensic Toxicology. In the year 2014, Dr. Anil Aggrawal published his very popular book, that is Textbook of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology. In that, the toxicology section contained a lot of information. However, in these books, that is Clinical and Forensic Toxicology, more elaborations and more content have been added. This book, Clinical and Forensic Toxicology, have been released in 2 volumes, that is Volume 1 and Volume 2. Both these Volume 1 and Volume 2 are divided into roughly 9 and 9 chapters, that is 9 chapters in Volume 1 and 10 chapters in Volume 2. And with that, in Volume 2 there are 2 more sections, that is Section 2 and Section 3, which contain case studies and also recent advances in toxicology. Another highlight of these 2 books is that there is a lot of videos which are demonstrated by Dr. Anil Aggrawal himself, which is a very innovative and interesting thing, which is a continuation to his previous injuries book, where this video demonstrations were first introduced. So with that said, we will now look into the contents of both Volume 1 and Volume 2, and let us see the pros and cons of this book. So in this Volume 1, let me first show you the index. So the contents of Volume 1 contain the introduction, general management, corrosives, non-metallic and mechanical irritants, then agricultural poisons, metallic irritants, vegetable poisons, venomous animals and their poisons, and then the mini atlas on snake scales, and it ends at food poisoning and poisonous foods. That is where Volume 1 ends. And related videos also have been given along with page numbers. This is a very nice thing that has been added for ease of access. With that said, let me move on to some of the beautiful illustrations that have been given in this. Even though a lot of content is already there, I don't want to cover each and every page. Let me go into some of the beautiful aspects of the illustrative parts of these books. That is, let me just bring to your notice how in the analytical toxicology, one example I am picking over here, that is where Dr. Aggrawal tries to explain the thin layer chromatography, where the photograph is given over here about thin layer chromatography. 2 photographs are there over here, or 2 pictures are there over here of thin layer chromatography. But to understand this, he has given a beautiful analogy over here about the number of men and women and children walking through muddy water, sticky muddy water, and the way each people reach at different times has been beautifully explained in this. And this is really a classical example of really illustrative thinking and concept based approach. Similarly, in this he has also added more examples of like horses running on sticky grass, etc. So these are not only aesthetically nice, but undoubtedly while reading, the reader feels it very clear and easy to understand. This is just one example that I have picked. Like, now let us move on to another example where I would like to show you about the biochemical aspects of these toxins. So whenever the chapter begins on that particular poison, there is reasonably good biochemistry which has been explained. For example, in this chapter of corrosives, Dr. Aggrawal begins with explaining acids and bases, the theories behind acids and bases, and a lot of information is given over there, whereby the reader gets an understanding as to why acids act in that way, why alkalis or bases act in a particular way, as we have had knowledge earlier only up to one extent, but now we are upgrading our knowledge and we are trying to correlate it with the basic sciences. So basic sciences have been explained very well. So this is one good example where I think we are looking at the theories of acids and bases which have been explained. The biochemistry part has been explained first, and then the mechanism of actions of the poisons have been dealt with. So let me show you another very good example of that. I'll come back to this one. So here in this, for example, I picked out one metallic irritants. In metallic irritants, as you can just focus on this table. As I said, aesthetically very nice. So this is a very innovative part, that is where a table of all the elements are given, and then which are the ones discussed have been ticked. So aesthetically nice to look. And anyway, let's go into the main content. I've just picked the example of lead poisoning. So commonly we come across this mechanism of action in lead poisoning, that is lead inhibits heme synthesis, and then we commonly come across this famous biochemical cycle of the heme synthesis, and at various levels how lead is inhibiting which enzyme. However, Anil Aggrawal sir now goes one more step ahead, and this is what I found very intriguing, that is the concept about in chronic poisoning. We frequently know about certain things like abdominal colic, facial pallor, etc., etc. So these things have been explained in the following fashion with each poison. First, Dr. Aggrawal gives the pure biochemistry that we have studied way back in our first year MBBS, that is what is the particular mitochondrial cycle, that is the enzyme related cycle or the biochemical cycle that is taking place has first been explained. Then he talks about how lead interacts with that particular biochemical cycle and what does it inhibit, and once it inhibits something, what are the symptoms that come are explained. So let me just show you this thing, if it can be focused over here. So here we can first see that there is one biochemical cycle. This is the normal biochemistry cycle. So first the basics have been covered. So after that he goes on to explain certain things. For example, here he says that is when lead inhibits the calcium channel, that leads to increased intracellular calcium. Because of this increased intracellular calcium within all the cells in the body, there will be contraction of the smooth muscles. So when there is contraction of smooth muscles in the heart and blood vessels, it leads to hypertension. Contraction of intestinal muscles lead to this colic and constipation, that is abdominal colic and constipation. Then when uterus contracts, it leads to these abortions. The vasospasm of the blood vessels leads to this circummolar pallor or facial pallor that we know of. So all these concepts in this book have been, as far as possible, been shown with the basic biochemistry what we are supposed to know, and in that cycle how it is acting, and even he has tried to correlate these symptoms which come, which is called reductionism, and this reductionism has been illustrated several times. So with this said, I also want to now show you the next one more unique part of this book, which, as I said, it was already there in the injuries book. So can we just have a look at this particular innovative thing that they have done in this textbook, is that is there is something called movie 1. Here I am taking the example of precipitation test for lead for convenience. Now here I have in my other hand another phone with me. I have installed the EduMed app in my phone, and this EduMed app you can get from the Google Play Store, and once you can register for free, and then if you search for this book, Clinical and Forensic Toxicology, you will be able to get that particular book. So now here it says on the right hand side as scan. So when I click on scan, this is what happens.
Camera is opening, please wait.
So this is what it says, and then it says tap to scan. Now I am going to focus on the particular image which has a play symbol on it, and I am going to tap it. As soon as I tap it, there is a video that has come, and this is a video which does not have voice because the text is already there. It's a contaminant fluid, maybe for example in this case a contaminated water containing lead. So a lead precipitate test is being done over here. Hydrochloric acid has been added and it is shaken, and the precipitate formation is being shown. And there you go. So that's how the white precipitate is shown over there, indicating that the water is contaminated with lead. So this is how another innovative thing that they have done in this particular textbook. As I said, it was also there in the previous book released in the year 2020 on injuries. Now let me show you another concept similarly, which I like very much. Is so if we can focus here, we always come across the statement that is organophosphorus and carbamates are like brothers. That is where the carbamate is the younger brother of organophosphorus poisoning, organophosphorus poison. And here there is a beautiful explanation with regard to this carbamate as to why it is weaker than organophosphorus. So Dr. Aggrawal has given one beautiful illustration over here, that is of an organophosphorus compound is being compared to one white paper, and carbamate also is compared to a white paper, and to organophosphorus compound paper the one gum is being put on the paper and water is being put on the carbamate, and then so it is meaning to say that if organophosphorus sticks to this gum and when it gets dried, it is very difficult or impossible to remove it, whereas for carbamate, once it dries up, it comes off on its own. So that is the difference, and that is the reason why it is being, now the text comes over here, that is in organophosphorus poison you require both pralidoxime, atropine and pralidoxime, because pralidoxime is required for cholinesterase reactivation, but whereas in the carbamate poisoning you don't require that because it gets hydrolyzed spontaneously by cholinesterase within 48 hours. So this concept of why we don't need to use pralidoxime in carbamate poisoning is shown in this particular photograph as gum versus water sticking. That is when something stick with gum and something stick with water. I mean, this is very innovative. This was not there in Father Aggrawal book, that is the textbook, but the sir has gone 2-3 steps ahead to make more illustrative things which are more understandable and very concept based. Having said so, we will quickly move on to the next concept, that is on paraquat poisoning. So as I told you, every poison when it is being dealt, that is almost every poison, let me use the word almost every poison. First, the basic biochemistry that we have learnt in first year is shown. This is of course in plants, and the explanation is given as to how basically the biochemical cycle takes place whether in humans or in plants. And once that is dealt with, he goes to explain in this particular biochemical cycle how paraquat acts and how the release of free radical takes place. So this we can understand by reading the basic biochemistry, and it saves us a lot of time as well. So we must appreciate the author's effort in taking so much pain. And I just want to bring to notice one thing, that is here in this paraquat poisoning, as sir has mentioned one beautiful line in brackets over here. He says visualize H as one proton. Anyway, we'll cut off this line, one proton. If we, let's just say we'll take only visualize H. That means this H is the one which is again being shown in this particular page as the H of NADPH is cut off, and that will lead to only NADP. So that H is being cut off, and when the H is cut off, he says that the PQ reductase, that is the endogenous paraquat receptors which are there, are releasing the free radical, and continuous release of these free radicals will ultimately lead to the destruction of the cell. So this concept has been explained with basic biochemistry, then how the paraquat poison acts, and he's even gone to an extent to tell about the endogenous paraquat receptors, which I was frankly not aware of, that endogenous we have paraquat receptors also, just like the concept of endogenous cannabinoid receptors, which we will see in volume 2. Now quickly I would like to show another thing which I liked in this book, that is in the snake atlas. Sir has explained a lot of things about snakes, as you can see over here. Even though doctors are not considered as herpetologists, but sir has taken the effort to explain many things. So here there is one video, and in this video, most of the videos have audio. I just want to show the same thing. So once again, I am taking my phone containing the EduMed app, and I click on scan.
Camera is opening. Please wait.
So then I click on tap to scan, and then I focus it on this particular thing.
We are going to show you how to recognize elapids, especially cobra. Here we are having a specimen of cobra, and so first of all you look at the front. This triangular scale is the mental scale. This is the mental scale, and then we come to the first scale. This is the first. So we count like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the nose. This is the eye. So this is the eye. This is the nose. This is the nasal scale. So first completely touches the nose. Second touches the nose. Third is the largest. You see, it is touching both the nasal scale as well as the eye scale. Same is this side. This is the mental scale, that first scale is touching the nasal scale is very nicely seen here. This is the nasal pit, nasal scale, first, second and third. Third is very large, very large. This is a line which is because of some compression or whatever. This is not a true division of scale. This is one single scale. So the biggest artificial feature is that the third scale is the largest scale. Let us look at the fangs also. The fangs have been broken, but this is basically large fangs, and which are not like viper fangs. Which viper fangs are completely hollow. These are solid, and these are known as protyroglyphus because the fangs are on the front. In some.
So anyway, it's a pretty lengthy video, so I want to just stop it over there. And so I just want to conclude about volume 1 at that part. So I had to make some papers over here to keep as landmarks, so please excuse the aesthetics. And now we will see about the contents of volume 2. So in this volume 2, as we discussed earlier, there are 10 chapters, primarily 10 chapters, which starts from CNS depressants, deliriants, then spinal poisons, peripheral nerve poisons, cardiac poisons, asphyxiants, pharmaceutical toxicology, substance abuse, miscellaneous poisons, anesthetics. Then a nice chapter on preservation of viscera for toxicology. And then after that we have the other sections, like section 2, which contains recent advances in toxicology, and section 3, which contains the other appendices, which I think we can just simply focus on the various aspects which are shown, such as case studies, then the recent law amendments. Then sir has also given information about DM in clinical and forensic toxicology, at least, which is in progress right now, and what is the career in forensic toxicology, some things like drug facilitated crimes, drugs in sports. So these are very interesting to teach, especially there is one thing over here, if you can focus, that is Agatha Christie's Poison. So a reader will not only find this book only from academic sense, but even from in a way type of a novel like approach has been given in this, because many of them are fascinated with reading novels, crime related novels, and this even serves that purpose. So it grasps the interest constantly. So let me just run you down through some, just like that, a few concepts in the volume 2. It goes in that same aspects, biochemistry is told, and then how the particular poison acts in that particular biochemical cycle, and in that biochemical cycle, because of acting at that particular levels, what are the symptoms produced. That same is being followed as much as possible, or as far as possible. So here is the concept where I found one very interesting thing on cannabis, where sir mentions about these endogenous cannabinoid receptors, because we know that we don't smoke cannabis in general, but then where did the cannabinoid receptors come from? So that's where he talks about discovered in the 1990s are the endogenous cannabinoid receptors. So it's a very interesting concept, that where did these cannabinoid receptors come from if we have not smoked cannabis at all. So and that means endogenously there are so many receptors, just like we were discussing in the paraquat. So like this, there are several concepts which have been explained, and very interesting things are there what we have not known until now. It is a good opportunity for all of us to upgrade our knowledge to that. And with that, let me quickly move on to some other beautiful things about this book, like the photographic illustration of the action of strychnine on the anterior horn cells, and then the postsynaptic glycine inhibition, etc., has been shown very well in these diagrams with particular anatomy as well. So with that, let me just give you some glimpses from the recent advances in toxicology, where sir has spoken about a lot of recent advances in toxicology, like this Conness syndrome and poisoning, and drug abuse, recent developments. So in that way, a lot of information is there. And here is the chapter on DM in clinical and forensic toxicology, where what are the prerequisite qualifications. Just suggestions have been made with regard to DM in clinical and forensic toxicology. So in that way, this book has covered all the contents, and that's what I wanted to basically show through my quick review that I have done. About the clinical and forensic toxicology, the latest book, volume 1 and volume 2, its contents, and I tried my best to point out the aspects which I like, because I received this book just 4 days ago. Incidentally, I was the first person to buy it as soon as it released, because the illustrations are always good when presented by Dr. Anil Aggrawal, which we have been seeing from 2014, where we saw that is the textbook of forensic medicine and toxicology, then forensic medicine and toxicology for MBBS, essentials of toxicology, injuries, and now this. So in all this book, illustrations are wonderful. However, no book is free of cons. That is, these are the pros which I have shown, which are definitely more. But rather than using the word cons, I would like to use the word what could have been or what could be improved in this volume 1 or volume 2, this book, Clinical and Forensic Toxicology. In my view, I felt in certain chapters, like when I went through, for example, in heavy metals only, when I went through mercury or arsenic or lead or thallium, etc., certain places I found that there was no mention of cause of death. We all know that these poisons they do give multi-organ failure, but what are the most common causes of death in cases of these poisons? I think it is essential, or at least in my view, it may be required to mention about cause of death for every poison through some data that is collected, especially when we are writing such comprehensive books. So that was one thing, something which I expected, and I found that it could be upgraded in the later editions, or it could be provided just like in a digital format where we can get such information through digital format access. And even in certain places I just felt that the biochemistry, for example, one thing that came to my notice, for example, that is organochlorines. In that there was liberty was not taken to explain the biochemical cycle and then go into the depth. So it is just my feeling that I think for everything this attempt should have been made, but here we should understand, or rather I know the problem behind this is that there are the publishing companies do not give Indian authors the liberty to write so much, so it could be that the content was actually there but it was cut off. That could be one possibility, but if that is not the possibility, then I feel that maybe an attempt can be made, and content biochemistry of the thallium, mechanism of action of thallium, which is not there in detail, can be added, and organochlorines biochemistry can be further elaborated. So in this way, if everything, all others also are included in the same uniform fashion, the book will truly become in always complete. So these are my views on clinical and forensic toxicology. So these were just my impressions, and I highly recommend everyone to keep these books, as you will never again get to read such masterpieces. So there no book is free from small deficits, that is inevitable, but for the effort somebody has put, and as we have seen, there are a lot of there's a lot of information one person can gain through these books, and I feel everybody should keep these books, be it a postgraduate or be it a practicing forensic medicine doctor, or even the emergency medicine doctors or the general medicine doctors. So these books are very, very helpful, and I think it is a must that everyone should have this particular book. So with this I would end my review for this, that is clinical and forensic toxicology, and in my next video I will review other good reads. Thank you very much.